And again, welcome to our January 16th webinar, Taking Training to Your Partners, the Role of eLearning Standards. And let me introduce our speakers today. Elizabeth Mohr is a client success manager at Rustici Software, where she prides herself on ensuring customers are delighted with their product, making full use of its capabilities, and answering customer questions along the way. Previously, she spent 10 years teaching elementary students and bringing a unique perspective to the world of e-learning. And joining her in the presentation today is Chris Tompkins, who's the Director of Sales for Rustici Software and Watershed, a company that provides software to improve compatibility across the L&D ecosystem. He's an expert in the standards like SCORM and XAI API, and uses his technical expertise to support e-learning RFP and procurement. Chris has an MBA from Belmont University focused on entrepreneurship and negotiations, and building on previous work at HP Compaq and XM Satellite Radio, he has over 15 years of experience matching the right technical solution to a client's needs. And joining Chris and Elizabeth in the background, you don't see them, are Tara and Alicia, and they are going to be monitoring chat and Q&A. So if you see a posting from them, know that they are official representatives from Rustici Software. And Chris, I'm going to turn the share over to you.
Great, thanks. I really appreciate it. What a fantastic introduction. Thank you all for joining today. I believe you should be able to see our screen at this point, so welcome. In the chat, we are always monitoring what's going on there, and Tara and Alicia have a way to bubble up things. So please feel free to put information, questions in the chat that we might use a little later. If we inspire some curiosity along the way, we kind of enjoy the back and forth that happens at the end. Tara, Nadine, and I are huge ski enthusiasts. To start it off, if you do ski, how many ski days are you at this season? That would be a fun piece of information for me. Otherwise, Elizabeth, I think we're going to get started here. Why don't you take us away?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited that you're here with us today for taking your training to your partners and the role of e-learning standards. Really, anyone that's spent much time with Chris or myself knows that we both really love to tell stories. And today we're really excited to get to share some stories with you with the goal of helping you understand that reaching your partners and meeting your audience where they are isn't just some fairy tale. It can be a reality. You don't have to let these complicated acronyms and learning standards stand in the way of your goals. Like Nadine said, my name is Elizabeth Mohr. I work on our account management team, and I work closely with customers every day to try to help solve the kinds of complex problems that we'll be talking about today. And I'm thrilled to have Chris Tompkins with me. He's an integral part of our leadership team here at Rustici, and he's been here for nearly 14 years, serves on multiple IEEE boards, and honestly just brings an incredible depth of knowledge, and I'm just thrilled that he's here with us. We're really fortunate to have Tara and Alicia behind the scenes. Like Chris and Nadine both said, please help this be interactive. Drop any questions you've got for us there, and we'll come to those at the end. So I'm excited to see how many ski days everyone's got in as well. Before we get too far into the weeds, I want to tell you a little bit about us and Rustici Software. We've been experts in learning technology since 2002, and our bread and butter is really helping things play nicely together in the e-learning world. And we do this by leveraging our standards expertise, and we help connect content and platforms across the e-learning ecosystem. And we're a smallish team based outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and we're really proud to have been awarded Best Places to Work for 15 years now in a row. So setting the stage here for the story that we're looking to tell here, we're going to be covering some real examples, ways that our customers are solving common training problems that their organizations have, and the role that these e-learning standards play. So as Chris and I are talking today, I really encourage everyone in the audience here, take a moment to reflect and be thinking about what your training needs are and what solutions could maybe work for you too. What we'll be covering certainly isn't an exhaustive list, and all of these might not apply to you, but keep in mind if you find yourself encountering any of these challenges that we'll be bringing up today. So the main things that we'll be talking about is, what does it mean to distribute content to your partners? how do e-learning standards fit into this story? We'll touch on some technical challenges that are involved with this concept of partner education and how we can help with simplifying that process. And then we're excited to be able to share. We're going to have story time for the second half of our presentation today, where we're going to share some real world examples from our customers and outcomes that they're seeing by utilizing our solutions. And what we mean by partner education program, you may hear us use this phrase extended enterprise, and what that use case really describes is those whose primary audiences are those that are outside the main branch of an organization. So this could involve folks like customers, channel partners, distributors, resellers, franchises, and some other folks outside of this extended enterprise that face similar challenges are people like associations that are looking to provide training to their members, and folks that are integrating with other software, for example, like a marketing software. So I want to ask you for a moment to reflect. How efficient is your system for sending out product training to your partners? So who this webinar is for those of you who are looking for a better way to deliver your content. Is your training content actually reaching your partners where they are? And the challenge here in meeting each of these audiences, members, where they are is, well, first, how do they need to access your content? Do you have visibility into your content and how it's being used? And what's that process look like inevitably when something needs to be updated or you need a newer version of your content? And what do we mean when we say deliver training to your partners? An example could be a manufacturing company with training that's related to a specific product, who may partner with both big box stores and smaller mom and pop operations, resellers, distributors. And you may hear, we've mentioned a few things already here. You may have heard this described in a few different ways. External partner training versus internal only training can be called many different names. Customer education or training program, partner training, product training, client training, this extended enterprise model that we covered. So for simplicity's sake, Chris and I are really going to try to stick with using the phrases customer or partner training for the sake of this webinar. And the benefits here, the benefits first of being able to take your training to your partners. First is that you will see an increase in your product's usage, the effectiveness of those products, and the sales. Next, your customers' customers are going to be happier and they're going to feel more satisfied when they're receiving the right fit, the right product, the right information for their needs. And ultimately, you're going to be able to reach even more partners because you will have the flexibility to be able to meet them where they are based on LMS and standards needs. But you may run into some trouble when it comes to just the wide variety of LMSs and the different systems that your partners are using and getting that content and everything to play nicely together. So Chris is going to help us dig in just a little bit deeper on these e-learning standards and the role they play in this story.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Anytime you go deeper on this topic, we get to standards and a little more technical on the front of how do these tools play nicely with one another? How do we connect some of these platforms together? And I'll admit, in my personal life, when I tell people like, oh yeah, I work with interoperability standards all day, people fall asleep immediately. So that's just a part of dealing with them. However, they can be pretty exciting, and I view them as different tools in the toolbox that help professionals that would attend this type of discussion work more efficiently within what they have. And when I go out in my garage and I work on cars, it's a horrible hobby. I don't recommend it, but I don't necessarily always grab the tool that is new. I want to grab the tool that fits the situation. So a screwdriver, a socket, and a wrench, they're all very similar tools to the uninitiated. They all turn a threaded bolt. Let's get the new one. but that's not how tools work. And interoperability are the ways that an authoring product in the e-learning industry and a learning management system that keeps up with people can put a course in that plays and tracks and reports identically the same way every time, regardless of whom you're playing it with. There are hundreds of learning management systems out there. There are millions and millions of different e-learning modules that need to play in those, and standards are the way that they work together. The ones we're going to talk about today, I'm going to come out of the gate and just tell you, old. SCORM 1.2 is almost 25 years old, and it is the thing that is used most commonly in the e-learning industry. And I'm sure a bunch of you on this call go, why would we do anything that old? Age and interoperability, they're the only times in technology where something old is strong. Once everyone on the planet agrees that an MP3 is the way that a band saves a song that you can listen to in your car, on your phone, or through the web, that becomes the most valuable part of the music industry, is that handshake of, yeah, give us this file and we'll play it. So SCORM and some of the other standards we're going to talk about here in a moment are old, but that's okay. They're wildly adopted. They work everywhere the same time. They're not broken. And candidly, I'm one of the people that's trying to like move all of this into the future. Killing SCORM is something I would love to do professionally. I still think we're going to use SCORM 5, 10 years from now. So everybody take a breath. That's okay. We're going to solve problems. We're going to do new age stuff through this baseline of rules that help things get along. You see this in Wi-Fi. You see this in MP3s or MP4s with video. This is a time where these instructions help collaboration work. And that's really, really important. So to get a little more technical, I'm curious if anyone on this call uses any of these. If you could type it in the chat for us to say, hey, I use this standard one or another. I'm trying to just paint a conversational picture in the chat here of there are a lot of people tuning into this call, and here are the ones that they use for their different organizations. And I'm already looking at it. SCORM 2004, XAPI, there's some AICC in here. I'm going to go through each one of these real quick because I'm sure you're comfortable with the one you're using, and you might be looking at the toolbox going, well, which one of these other things is useful for me? Um, my friend Abraham Lincoln once said if he had 4 hours to cut down a tree, he'd spend the first 3 sharpening the axe. My goal here is to make sure that you guys just know which of these tools in your toolbox might be useful, because I'm pretty lazy and doing things the hard way is not nearly as interesting to me as just grabbing the right tool that's sharp for the job that we need to use it for. So, SCORM 1.2. It is the most common e-learning standard in the world. If I'm just talking to someone and they say they use SCORM, I assume that that's what they're using. Rustici has some webinars and some conversations we do around the stats that we see. But in the world we live in, it's safe to say like over half of all content that we see in the world in 2025 is going to be SCORM 1.2. Does the basics really well. Plays a course with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Tells you time, completion, pass, fail, score on the other side. If that's all you're doing, try that. It's the easiest tool, and unless you need to do extra, SCORM 1.2 might be all you need. Widely adopted across Moodle, the world's largest open source LMS in the world, and very common in almost all corporate training, all government training. I even see it less in college, almost not at all in K through 12. So, very useful tool depending on where we're at. SCORM 2004, great. It does a lot of extra things, individual questions and answers, and whether they were right or wrong. They're called interactions in SCORM. SCORM 2004 also has bigger buckets for things like an essay question. It gets pretty technical pretty fast. The hard part is that SCORM 2004 isn't a complete sentence. SCORM 2004 comes in 3 different editions, second, third, and fourth, and they all hate one another, and there's no backwards compatibility among them, and they don't play nicely with SCORM 1.2. So if you're going to go use SCORM 2004, you need to understand which edition your LMS supports. It's probably third or fourth. And you have to realize that if you're going to go through that extra pain to do this, make sure you're using it. Get better question results. Run reports on the other side. If you're looking at SCORM 2004 because it's the latest version of SCORM and that's what we are going to use, that might actually be more work. It's a harder tool to use if you're just trying to do time completion pass fail score. So little guidance there. We see it more heavily in military. We see it more heavily in high compliance corporate environments, almost not at all in K through 12 and college. XAPI, near and dear to my heart. From the makers of SCORM, this entirely different thing. XAPI is a standard that lets learning data flow from one place to another. It lets an AR, VR, XR program just say, Chris did this to this special database known as a learning record store. If this is interesting to you guys, I love talking about it and would be happy to do so with you. But for the sake of it, realize that it's not a package with a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's no assessment. It's not like an MP3. It's like your Spotify Wrapped. It's sending data through. It is not governing what a course is or does. We see it in a lot of big corporate training. We see it in a lot of military applications. CMI5 is the package for XAPI communication. XAPI establishes the way two learning systems talk. CMI5 is what they're saying through that channel. If you're trying to replace SCORM with XAPI, you're going to have a hard time. If you're going to replace SCORM with CMI5, I go, welcome to the future. That's our plan. That's how things are going to go. CMI5 plays a course. It tracks basic things. It can be more expressive. It's not widely adopted in ways that might be interesting for everyone on this call, but it is absolutely something I hope you talk to your vendors, talk to your instructional designers, talk to your LMS, and talk to your LMS administrators about. It is pretty neat and solves a lot of problems in an easy way once it's implemented. LTI, a great IMS consortium known as One EdTech Global. They are working very hard to do some really cool things. LTI are more like links that play courses. We see a big rise in it thanks to LinkedIn Learning, which has adopted LTI and is putting their library out via that standard. See it a lot in K through 12, a lot in collegiate type of training and learning, and LTI is now starting to be used pretty aggressively inside of corporate training programs as well. So love that standard, love the work that they're doing. AICC's on the list. I saw AICC in the chat. Thank you for proving my point. It's the oldest one here. First e-learning standard that I think is still used today is AICC, governed by ADL, the same group that's in charge of SCORM and XAPI. AICC originally came out of the aviation industry. Aviation training has to happen, high compliance environment. We need a thing with a beginning, a middle, and end, and an assessment that sends through time completion pass fail score. AICC is the oldest and is still commonly used. That's okay. When you're only doing the basics again, we only need to use the minimal effort that works. And more importantly, most authoring tools can save an AICC file. Most LMSs can play and report on an AICC file. We're good to go there. So that's a light look at each of these little standards in the industries that we see them in. AICC is commonly used in corporate training, obviously aviation training, and some federal training as well. I don't see it very commonly K through 12 or collegiate type of learning. So as we move on, let's kind of just think through the practical way that most learning management systems, instructional designers, people who are building content want to do some basic things. Design a course that's engaging, beginning, middle, end, and assessment is common. I know we do other things in learning and training, but like we're going to stick to the basics here for this example. And you got to get it to a learner. And we ideally know how the learner did. And today, some of that work is publish a course out of your authoring tool for whatever the LMS can accept. And that's fine. So for Moodle-based LMS, you probably give them a SCORM course. If you are a content library and you're selling into government organizations, hey, this military training must be delivered as a SCORM 2004 4th edition course per DOTI 22, 12226. They specify what you need, and you have to go and you have to publish that work every single time. So in this scenario, you've got one course and you've got 4 different versions, a snapshot in time to deliver, that then make their way to a learner's device via whichever LMS they happen to log into, and that's where everything lives. This is kind of how it works today. So you have one course, which is now turned into 4 courses, each with their own version. And if you want to change anything for the learner, you have to republish the course and change that version in 4 different places, which is 4 different conversations with an LMS administrator. And then you have to get into, well, what happens to the people who are currently in flight and have a bookmark but haven't completed yet? And it turns into a whole thing. This is hard, and this is kind of the way the world works today. What we're starting to see is that in the last few years, there are a lot of tools in the market that are starting to change this paradigm quite a bit. And technically, they are launching things, but we are going to kind of flip the script on how some of these things engage to a mode where we can start to centralize some of these things together. And what I mean by that is that we want to get into this more vertical process of publish a course, put it into a course management tool, and then play it for the learner who needs to play it in the environment that they clicked play on. This allows different LMSs to take advantage of whichever standards they support. If you're in a Moodle environment, trying to do CMI5 for the sake of something new is a huge lift. But there are ways for your instructional design team to build next-gen content, to build in the things that they want and save them as CMI5 because it is important to the way that they want to track or the pedagogical outcomes that they're trying to measure, and still deliver it to Moodle via a shell of a SCORM 1.2 course that Elizabeth's going to talk about here in just a moment. The other thing that we can do once we get into a management mode is to update the master version of the course in one place. And instead of then having to republish for each and every LMS that you're distributing to, we put these shells of a course in a place so that whenever a learner clicks play, they come to the source of that course and they hit today's version in near real time. And doing it in that way, especially for some of our customers in retail training landscapes, it allows them to deploy out content to wherever their customers, learners live, and the content team can still stay laser focused on building compelling training that meets the compliance needs or meets the product distribution needs and helps them guide, can we build better and more engaging content and spend less time with, oh no, we misspelled a word. Let me email all 50 LMS administrators that I work with and try to get them to take this new version before we get too far into this process. It cuts down a lot of problems all at once. We also then get centralized reporting for the content team for the first time. One of my favorite stories is one where they were watching this big deployment out into 3 different LMSs, external contractors, internal employees, and our customers all at once in 3 different LMSs. And they realized at like learner 30, no one's ever gotten this question right. What's going on? This is an easy question. And it turned out they had marked the wrong answer as correct. But that would have skewed all of those scores for 30,000 people across the board. By intervening and fixing the course problem, a simple mistake, at learner 30, they saved themselves from making a mess out of 30,000. It was a really, really nimble and a really good way to manage that. And then finally, when we go back to like the way that we've been doing things for the last 20 years inside LMSs, the people who are building the courses have no ability to ever remove these titles from a remote LMS. And it's basically, here's the course, you have it forever, have a nice day. And I know for a fact that that's not really how intellectual property works here in 2025. And so by going through a management vertical, you're able to get full control, to set a seat limit, to set an expiration date, to remove content once its useful life has been eliminated, and not have to rely on an LMS administrator that works at a company that you're not responsible for to do this homework for you. And there are many ways that the industry is starting to adopt to this type of management. And I think that that is kind of the future of learning and standards is use these standards, use the way that these tools have agreed to play nicely with one another to your advantage. So Elizabeth, walk us through a little how some of this process works.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So it's kind of funny that I'm going to be talking about this specific part today because in my life, as I like to call it, BR, before Rustasy, I was an elementary school teacher. So it's funny that I'm about to share with you that our approach at Rustasy to help support this type of content distribution is more or less a way of helping you cheat. We're all about working smarter here. When you need to give your content to a customer or a partner, they're going to need that content in a certain way based on their LMS requirements. Probably one of the acronyms that Chris went through a few minutes ago. And where Rustasy comes in is that we help create just a tiny shell of a course that can be shared with your partners. And with that file, their LMS is able to stream that content and track it in advanced ways. So some pros and cons of using a CDS or content distribution solution. First, the pros, your partners are going to have your training. Any updates that you need are seamless without your partners needing to do anything additional on their end. You are going to be able to have that insight into how they're using the training so that you can make adjustments, improve your content. No more of that situation that Chris mentioned where a course gets shared out with 30,000 learners and they realize that an answer has been marked incorrectly. What a giant waste of time that could have been avoided in this type of situation. The right tool can actually act as a source of truth for all of your training content. You don't have to become a standards expert, and neither does your partner. You can leave that part of it to us. And your partners are able to actually sell every hour that you're not there with them. The cons here is just bringing on a new technology. There's some learning involved. There's some budgeting that goes along with that. And some tales for you to imagine. I want you to kind of think back here. What are standards that your partners are asking for? Are you having to say no in a lot of situations where folks are coming to you to support a certain standard type that you don't currently? What platforms or systems are you working with within your ecosystem? Is there a new market that you're interested in and you're trying to break into? Be mindful of what standards are in that industry. And try to look into your crystal ball, look into the future. What are you looking to achieve? Do you want to be able to have more insights into your content and into your learners? Are you interested in making things a little more interactive, spice things up, some AR, VR? Or is something like compliance tracking really important to you? And now for my favorite part, story time. We're going to start here today. Chris has a good chunk of examples here that he's going to share, real life examples of folks working with Rustasy to help try to solve these problems of being able to take training to their partners, dealing with that standards compatibility piece. So I'm going to let him go now.
Thanks. All right. So this is kind of my favorite part, a little more casual for a second. And I've just got 3 kind of presented, and I just want to take some time to talk through them. The first is there's a good story around using this strategy to deliver product training. We have some friends at Valvoline who we help do this, and it's a really exciting marketing proposition. Their goal is to put content at service centers where technicians are doing the changing of oil. Selling directly to consumers is a whole different hustle and strategy, but there's quite a bit of Valvoline product that is put into a customer vehicle, not by the owner of the vehicle, but by the technician who is doing the work. And they have a suspicion, and it's a good one that they can now measure, that the more educated technicians are in the value of Valvoline products, the better that the customer experience will be, and ultimately there will be an increase of their products sold at these different service stations. Independents, OEM manufacturers, service bays, there's a lot of technicians out in the world, and each of them lives in their own LMS. Asking all of those technicians to come directly to Valvoline's LMS or Valvoline.com and take the product training there, sure, you can do that, but these learners already live in all of these other learning management systems, largely for compliance training. And by delivering light content into where the learners are already living, they're starting to see a huge drive and increase in their product training for those technicians around the world. And having the data, not by going to those LMSs and politely asking every 12 months, hey, can you give us a report on how our learners took our courses? They see all of this stuff remotely in near real time. And having that data, product training organizations can go back to their stakeholders and have really intelligent conversations around, hey guys, we deployed all of this product training here. Here's the insights that we see. Let's start to layer in that math with the other incentives and coupons and spiffs and promotions that we're doing to prove that product training is driving an increase in outcomes. It's a really elegant use case. And by just putting a shell of whatever that LMS administrator wants to do, Valvoline has a way to deliver today's product training, regardless of how long ago they integrated with the platform. They monitor all of that use remotely. And if products expire or training becomes irrelevant, they can be sure to cut that off so that somebody's not out in the world taking a 5-year-old product training when it got stuck in their LMS and no one ever knew to get rid of it. It eliminates a lot of the conversations that they have to have with retail LMS administrators and lets them be super nimble and super insightful into driving product conversations with technicians that eventually trickles down to better end customer experiences. So really, really slick and interesting use case there, and one that I get excited about, and like big thank you to our friends at Valvoline. We have a deeper case study for this one available to you guys. If you just reach out, we'll give it to you. If you want to really get into the nitty gritty of what's going on there. So kind of the shortened fairy tale version of a much longer novel, but a fantastic read. And Tara is already ahead of me and has dropped a link to this case study in the chat for you. The second one is really interesting, and I think it's an area where we're going to see a lot of growth. I love the Moodle platform. Big fan. Has amazing support for SCORM 1.2, largest open source deployment in the world of any LMS. And I see a lot of use in the federal space right now as they move to a open source first type of mentality. Fully support. Think it's great. One of the challenges is there are certain requirements with contract vehicles, training programs, even at the Department of Defense level, there's something called a Department of Defense Instruction, a DoD, and it has a number 1322.26. And it like mandates what these teams must do. And sometimes it's SCORM 2004, fourth edition. And one of the problems that I just kind of used a lot of acronyms to outline is that content teams have to do advanced things, either by mandate or by reason or with a desire to track more and deeper, interesting things. And I talk to a lot of instructional designers that get into the pedagogical approach to building training. And this guy named Kirkpatrick shows up. And now we really need to be able to measure a lot of individual questions and answers and things. Moodle's great, but it can't do all of those things. And any attempt to add a plugin or change the source code of Moodle, or these things get out of hand pretty quick when it comes to upgrading what is effectively the inner workings of an LMS. And instead of heading down a path of like, oh, if instructional designers want to do these things, or if we have to take this content to meet some type of instruction like the DoD, like we're going to have to go change the LMS, and it spirals out into a year-long investigation that's hard. With what our approach that we're discussing today can enable, we end up in a place where you can just give Moodle a SCORM 1.2 course. It's a 12 kilobyte file that looks and behaves to Moodle like every other e-learning package in the world. But when that Moodle learner launches that shell of a course, we can stream SCORM 2004 content in fourth edition that's fully tracking everything and just update time completion pass fail score in Moodle's gradebook. And what this does is it allows day-to-day operations of running that learning management system to remain completely unchanged and have instructional designers, learning teams play nicely with an LMS that might not be up to the same speed as their needs and wants and desires and mandates. And by putting some of the technical complexity to solve this challenge in the hands of content creators, everybody kind of benefits in a really elegant way. And Moodle's day-to-day operations and Moodle's gradebook and not having to edit any of that custom stuff to just get a package, assign it to the learner, it takes an LMS administrator's burden way down. I've been here, as Elizabeth kind of introduced me, for like 14 years. And one thing is very true and clear to me. Every LMS administrator I've ever met in my time at Rustasy Software has 47 other jobs. I do not understand how some of these LMS administrators keep up with everything. And if you want your content to be really successful in an LMS that you're not in control of, the easiest way to do that is to make an LMS administrator's life super easy. And by going down this path, I see a lot of teams have really good insights. And we have some case studies that we do for various government agencies where schoolhouses and big institutions of learning can distribute out to all of the different places where federal employees or a soldier or a contractor might live. But those organizations have a mission. They need to tell Congress exactly how many learners we had today in order to solve budgetary problems. And if you have full insight to everyone ever who took your course this year, you can easily report up to those levels and meet the mission and solve really complicated problems seamlessly all at once. So there's some elegant ways here to help play with Moodle. And that's true at universities, it's true in the federal space, it's true in the defense space. And as I see more and more corporate organizations adopt an open source type of mentality, I think this content strategy works in corporate Moodle environments as well. Happy to talk about that stuff. We've got some good case studies to follow up there too. And then finally, there's a really weird use case that solves a lot of personally identifiable information, security, and InfoSec challenges. What do you mean? Well, if you just deploy your content out into the world, often you're not really comfortable with them owning your intellectual property forever. I grew up in the age where MP3s were the thing, and we traded them freely at times in ways that were kind of uncomfortable for Metallica. So in this world, handling privacy concerns is hard. You don't want to give away your information, but the minute you can track things remotely, it creates a situation where our friends in the EU will immediately bring up GDPR, data privacy concerns. We have pharmaceutical, technical customers. We have high finance clients, even medical clients that immediately start saying, I don't know what are we going to do with all of this personally identifiable information? And one of the ways that our approach is kind of innovative is that we can actually hash and block personally identifiable information, where only the LMS administrator will know that Elizabeth took this course, and the creators of the content will have aggregate stats, 43 people took the course, but they'll never be able to know it was Elizabeth specifically. And in cases of healthcare and in cases of some EU clients, we've been presented with some challenges around personally identifiable information, around GDPR, and used this type of central remote connection to learning management systems to solve a lot of really sticky lawyer problems. So if you're on this call and you're like, oh, I have this cool content, I want to do some of these things, and my LMS has privacy concerns, and we could never do that because of this thing. We've got a lot of really cool stories to talk about and to explain to you guys and to listen to where the data needs to live, where reports need to surface, and where there might be intellectual property issues, either with the course or with the learners. And we have some clever ways to iron out all of that stuff. What feels like a nightmare story might be a happy fairy tale if you just approach it in a different way. We're going to use really complex e-learning standards acronyms to solve the problem, but if we take it up and take a breath for a second, hey, we have some ways to do some really cool things without you guys having to learn the inner workings of an XAPI or SCORM communications model. Talk to us about those nightmares. What seems really hard to a lot of teams is, a pretty simple path for us. And handling data privacy and intellectual property concerns are one of the things that I really enjoy talking about, and we're happy to go into that. Um, Naomi has just asked, what LMSs does Rustici work with beyond Moodle? In what I'm talking about right now and in the way that we distribute, we can work with any learning management system that supports the basics of one of the e-learning standards we talked about a little earlier on this page. So if the LMS can play any one of these files, we can connect this type of approach to them. And if the content is saved in any one of these files, we can play today's version of that content in any other LMS that supports one of these. We can mix and match the list on the screen today really elegantly, again, solving a lot of problems at once, including those privacy or IP concerns. Elizabeth, you've been very patient and letting me tell a set of stories here. Thank you. I think you have a few of your own. So I'm going to kind of give you the chance to let me take a breath and you to tell some of our cool stories.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited to get to share these stories. A big part of what I do in my role as a client success manager is working closely with our customers every day about these types of complex problems and how they're able to utilize our approach to help support their training. So what I want to kind of touch on is kind of highlight some of these specific customer stories and share what they have to say in their own words. First up here, we have some high compliance industries. Industries like oil and gas, manufacturing, healthcare. An example here is that we work closely with a healthcare organization utilizing our approach, Penn Medicine. You may have heard of them, a world-renowned health organization focusing on things like research, patient care. They utilize Rustici to help centralize their content so that they can streamline that distribution to multiple branches and make their training a lot easier to access. Their goal, Penn Med wanted to be able to more easily distribute the content that was created. They have a whole team of instructional designers, and they also have specific regulatory concerns. They have some optional off-the-shelf courseware, things they want to make available to their learners. And since their learner population all exist within a really highly regulated industry like healthcare, it was important that whatever solution they worked with was able to reliably track their training and their course completions while also giving them insight with robust reporting. They needed to be able to clearly see and track this compliance because in their industry, any violations can result in things like citations, fines. What they had to say is that everything is just more efficient and quicker with Rustici. When we get calls from legal or our regulatory teams, we need to be able to provide information very quickly, and we're able to do that. Next up is with content updates. Our world is ever changing, and in many industries, I would caution to say most, content needs frequent updates. Things like a software version change, regulation changes. These are things where you will especially see the benefit of being able to seamlessly update your content. From SANS, who's a global leader in information cybersecurity training and certification, gosh, their programs are helping more than 165,000 professionals and over 6 million knowledge workers better defend systems and networks. So needless to say, before working with us, their very manual delivery and management processes were extremely time consuming. And in this ever-changing world of cybersecurity, being able to provide that current up-to-date information was absolutely critical for them. And I have a fun quote from them in referencing the old way that they used to do things. They said, content management and distribution was like death and taxes. And for the longest time, there was just a certain way it had to be done. But by utilizing Rustici's approach, they're able to not only better understand their content and its usage, but be able to seamlessly allow for those frequent and consistent updates that are required not only by their industry, but by their customers. And then finally, associations. I think many of us are probably currently or have been members of professional associations. This is a perfect opportunity for organizations that are looking to distribute out many different courses and content. So for example, LOMA, it's one of the world's largest associations that support the insurance and financial services industry. They work with over 700 member companies worldwide to better understand their industry's trends so that they can better inform their strategy, develop the talent that they've got working in the field, and create innovative solutions to be able to better support their industry. With our approach, they've been able to implement a subscription model for their content so that they can better service their members. And what they have to say is that the value here is really being able to get their content that they've worked hard on in the hands of the people who really need it. The more people they're able to reach, it increases their reach, and ultimately it's benefiting their members. So we've covered a lot of ground today, but we've still given you a pretty abridged version of these stories. SCORM support, standard support, connecting with your partners and providing your training. It doesn't have to be some horror story. There really are options out there to help with sharing your training and turn that fairy tale idea into a reality. And we really want to help support you. We would love to be able to work with you on that journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. Those were some stories that we told. I've got like 4 or 5 queued up in my head that we also help with. Like, this is overly casual. Welcome to Rustasy. This is kind of the way we approach what some view as a really dry and boring topic, but there are exciting ways for learning and training folks and LMS folks to play nicely with one another here. You've been doing a great job in the chat of queuing up some questions. I've got some here from Sarah, Abdullah, Naomi that I'm certainly going to talk about. Dump them in here. We've got a little bit of extra time intentionally to kind of talk through and get more specific. So feel free to include some of those things. And what we don't make it to, if you've asked questions, I see we've got them all logged here, and we'll do our best to follow up, or please reach out with one of these resources. I often joke you found the one thing in the world that we can help people with. So please ask us anything really. It's not a hard topic for us. It's one that we really, really enjoy. And I kind of assume most people in the world don't want to talk about SCORM, so I leave you alone. But if you do, oh, you're my people. Welcome. Like, we really love this stuff and we'd love to help. Okay.
A lot of fun at dinner parties.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, maybe not talking about work, Elizabeth, but I enjoy our dinner parties. Fair. I'm going to jump into some questions here. So, Sarah, you've asked a great question. So, in this source of truth approach with a content delivery system, does each client put it in and publish it in their standard of choice? Yes. In the case of like Valvoline, they let the instructional designers build whatever the source of truth for the content needs to be. And sometimes they use SCORM 2004 fourth because it's moving more data, and sometimes they need to track individual responses to start to measure like the efficacy of what they're learning. Did people answer? How did they answer? If it wasn't right, how should it have been? But if they're deploying out to a quick lube station that only uses like Moodle or something very basic, they just give the LMS administrator a SCORM 1.2 course. And what this does is it allows the content delivery system to deal with the exchange there. You don't want to have to negotiate. Well, we're selling to the small station. We got to make the course worse so that it works over there. That's where you're at today. Using a CDS, you get to say, hey, go build whatever you want to build for reasons, and we will just go deal with that LMS in whatever way that LMS prefers to be dealt with. And this removes a lot of friction. It stops a lot of investigations. It makes it super duper easy to do a quick free proof of concept. Hey, let's see if this works. Here's our course, put it in there. Does it play? Great. End of list. Some of the magic here, Sarah, is that what we're really doing is we're playing the course remotely using an advanced player that can handle all standards at once. So while it feels like you might be launching out of a learning management system, I just need that shell of a course to initiate the LMS's browser, and then I'm effectively playing our advanced player in what appears to be theirs. And when the learner exits, we update as much of the tracking information as we can through that LMS's player. This is a really clever way to help the source of truth be the same everywhere. And I think that that's really what you're looking for. The source of truth for today's content, the source of truth of which version of today's content did the learner take, and the source of truth for the LMS administrator on here are the learners that should be taking this, and here's how they did. And trying to get everybody to the same source of truth is ultimately the goal. And that's what I get excited about there. Do we support LTI? Yes, in and out. So LTI 1.1 and LTI 1.3 are both tools in our toolbox that we can play and we can distribute. LTI gets a little weird. We're not moving around packages, we're moving around links, and the differences between LTI 1.1 just setting a completion status and LTI 1.3 doing more. And there's some nuance here of how LTI is impacting this world. But if your team is heavily involved in LTI, I'd love to talk you through all the ins and outs. I'm sure it would put like 45 people on this call to sleep immediately, but I am happy to do that conversation. LTI is amazing, and I'm happy to help you imagine what might be next there. Ray, how do you handle bandwidth issues? If the course files are held on your LCMS, all the local files are on the customer LMS, just point to your parent. Is there any lag? It depends. Our tools, content delivery systems, I'm trying to just speak broadly as an industry expert and not speak about Rusticy's own products, because these are two different things and we might be able to help you in different ways, and I'll be equally excited about all of them. It is the burden of the person hosting the courses, the LCMS, Ray, and what the words you're using were. And yeah, you've got to have like uptime and all the things. When we do it, we run it on a global platform powered by AWS. We use CloudFront to localize the big courses as close geographically to where the learner actually clicked play. And we can handle all of these things at scale. And sometimes our team's a little better than some of the Moodle hosting teams in the world. So actually, streaming time, bandwidth issues, redundancies are completely eliminated in some of these worlds when you show up with a content delivery system. Even if their LMS isn't the fastest, most reliable thing in the world, being in full control of that means no one falls out. They get a better experience than if they were native in their own LMS. Your mileage may vary. There's a lot of details to go into around that, but if you're really interested in what it takes to deploy an LCMS like this globally, I'd love to tell you what I've learned over time. It's a pretty interesting discussion for those who care. The aviation industry, what's it using now? Yeah, I don't think, generally speaking, the aviation industry is still on AICC. Even though that standard was birthed from there, there are guts of AICC in SCORM and even in XAPI and CMI5. So let's not hate on our elders here. It's still used, maybe not as much by the aviation industry. Have seen some aviation courses. I think they've all moved on. The FAA no longer even governs AICC to kind of tell a story. They moved that governorship into ADL, from what I understand. So, like, things have evolved, but there are educational institutions and corporate training that find usefulness in it. AICC can actually handle remote content in some interesting ways, even here in 2025, that makes it show up every now and then as a useful tool in the toolbox. So even though our friends in the aviation industry might not use it extensively day in and day out, we stand on the shoulders of giants. So thank you for all the old timers who put some work into that thing. Let's see. Vincent, what's the difference between Rusticy Dispatch and Content Controller? Vincent, great question. We're getting kind of Rusticy specific there. Rusticy Dispatch has nothing to click on. It's driven by an API. Content Controller has a user interface stacked on top of it and is effectively just using that API for folks that don't want to build this madness themselves. SCORM Cloud Dispatch is available, again, UI, API, but those type of customer specifics, hey, just call me. We'll talk through them if that's interesting to you. We have a lot of tools that are built for developers because we are all failed developers, and we're here to help in whatever way you want to use this magic integrated into your tools. Kate, if the org discontinues a partnership with you, does the org get access to data collected during the time contracted? It depends on which side of that coin you're on, Kate. So if you own the content and you're distributing out to all the LMSs, yeah, their standard reports will exist in their system in perpetuity. It's their stuff. If it's the other way around, if you're getting a file from a vendor and you're playing it in your LMS, you'll have all of your reports. You just won't have the ability to play that video again or something along those lines. So it depends on which side of the house you're on. Are you asking about the content or the LMS administration? But once you cut that thing off, they'll still have the shell of a course living in the LMS, but when a learner plays it, it will fail. That's the gatekeeping. That's how we turn a license on or off based on seats or expiration date or you don't pay, you don't stay type of modes. But for folks living in an LMS, just because that content got cut off, any legacy data you have, any interactions information, completions, pass fails, scores, certificates, you should still have that all in your LMS however it lives today. We got time for like 2 more, and then I'll probably call it quits. Adula asked about, what about H5P? H5P is a great standard. H5P is not yet at a place where we see widespread use of it in these type of deployments. It's a quick and easy free way to build a course in Moodle and track it in Moodle. And there are other LMSs that use it, but once you start picking H5P as a standard apart, like maybe I've been doing this too long, but it does not pass muster for a lot of teams that really take a close look at what H5P is and does. And I hope that standard continues to evolve. It being baked into Moodle is pretty good, but it is not a standard used for high compliance training. It is often a free and easy tool for instructional designers. And once you start really picking into how it plays tracks and how the standard is written, a lot of folks just prefer to pivot over to SCORM. So it's not one that Rustici supports inside of its tools yet. I would love to get more involved with H5P, but it is also like not as useful. And when you start asking some questions about like how e-learning really needs to move in the world, H5P hasn't yet been able to solve those problems. And so we don't fully support it yet. But it is an interesting standard, and you should ask all of your vendors about H5P. I'm a pretty neutral guy. I just want standards to play nicely with one another, and I don't care which one wins. H5P just hasn't been solving real world problems in 2025 in a way that we can fully support in our product mix yet, but that doesn't mean it's a bad standard or doesn't have a full life in front of it. I guess finally, Abdullah, I think we should talk. You've asked questions about how to build a SCORM compliant LMS, how to upgrade old LMSs. I'm just sensitive that I could talk about that all day, but there's like 84 other people on this call that will like fall asleep immediately. So I'd love to have that discussion with you. It's near and dear to my heart and something that Rustici takes exactly what you see on the screen here. Ask us anything really. So Abdullah, if you'd like to have that conversation, hey, I got some time tomorrow, early next week, we can talk through all of those details and save everybody else an instant nap here in the afternoon. Regardless, I think I'm at time. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm not sure if Nadine wants to hop back in here and wrap us up with the eLearning Guild, but super grateful for the Guild. Big round of applause to Nadine. I can't tell you how many presentations I do, and Nadine's preparation and attention to detail here has made this super smooth and easy for all of us. So big thank you to the Guild for the opportunity, but more specifically to Nadine and the team for helping us get this all set up and bringing you all here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great presentation, both from a perspective of general information related to e-learning standards, as well as how Rustici can help people with the work that they need to do. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to close off the meeting right now. The recording will be on the Learning Guild website probably by the end of this week. If not, then it'll be early next week when our manager gets it up there. So you can come back and revisit the information if you don't contact Chris and Elizabeth directly. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Chris, enjoy your snowboarding.
Thank you. See you out there.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.